Welcome to episode 87 from the Shed End with myself, T-Dot, as always. Thank you very much for joining us. Theo, how are you doing?
Not bad, thanks. Rainy London here. It was pouring down last night, but slightly better today. We're just talking offline how I feel the international break's gone quite quickly for once, which is quite a rare occasion, seeing usually they're quite dire and they seem to drag on, but this one seems to have gone quite quickly. But that being said, really looking forward to some Premier League action at the weekend, Chelsea, Aston Villa. We'll talk about that in a bit, but how's your week been so far?
Yeah, good. Busy, but yeah, I think I always find with internationals, I either really get heavily invested into them and I watch every single international game possible, or I just lose all interest with them. And I feel like this was one of those moments where I just didn't have the motivation to watch any international football. I probably caught, I'm going to say about 20 minutes of every single like collated game of international football. So I did sort of see bits and pieces online. I think Pulisic had a really good game. Levi Colwell, I think you're going to talk a bit about some of these games, but Levi Colwell also had a good game. So now I'm missing some key.
Madueke,
Madweki
yeah.
had a really brilliant game for under 21s as well. So um, I still think, I mean, I want to ask you a question actually. What's your thoughts on playing internationals, qualifiers or friendlies or whatever at this point in the season where it's so pivotal for certain players and certain clubs? Like, do you see the logic in playing games at this point in the season, or should they just wait till the end of the season and maybe play all these kind of qualifiers in almost like a group of games rather than just try and fit them in when there's a
Yeah,
little
it's a
gap?
tricky one to answer because at the same time, you do want to give the players a summer holiday, which usually happens around June, July time. And then usually the players
Yeah,
report back for pre-season start of July. So it will be hard to cram maybe 4 or 5 games in that June period when players should be, jetting off to Mykonos or Marbella or wherever they choose to go, Saint-Tropez. Um, but that being said, yeah, end of March time is usually when it's make or break for a lot of teams. It's the crunch part of the season. It can really break your momentum if you're doing well, which I kind of hope it did for Arsenal in a way. But also get a bit frustrated how all those teams fighting for top four, particularly United, how they somehow always get away with some of their players being injured at that pivotal time. I think it was Marcus Rashford wasn't selected or pulled out of an injury, and then he was seen in New York on holiday. Same, I think,
yeah,
with Thomas Partey with Ghana. I think he was back in training today, but I think I might have read that he didn't play for Ghana. So it's a bit like it's still important games. Where if you're selected, you need to report, but you can't be having these kind of little minor injuries preventing you from going if it's not the case. So, but yeah, I think it's a good question because we do have them in September, you have them in October, then you have them in March and in June. So it's kind of those 4 windows where you get international football. This season was a bit of an exception. We had the World Cup in December, so maybe we could have done without
yeah.
an international break in March. That being said, Euros next summer, a lot of qualifiers to play. So I think this was the first of the bunch. So yeah, from that perspective, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's so I mean, so you make some valid points. Obviously, there's still been a lot of talk about players not having the right recovery period in terms of off season and on season, and they I think at one point they had the Nations League during one of the summer breaks, so might have been last year or the year before, but Modric was a player that I did see get a lot of criticism. I think against England in that international for not potentially playing as well as he could. I think Paddy Shield as well potentially. I think for the might have been for the under 21 game. I might be wrong there, but he got a bit of criticism as well. And it seems to be some players can turn it on for country. You look at Pulisic, I think he scored a really good goal from what I got to see. But do you think it's just that Mudryk hasn't really played a lot of football when you think back to some of the games that he hasn't played for Chelsea? Um, why he's probably a bit rusty, the fatigue and just kind of missing out on that kind of in-game form that you do need to keep consistently going for club and country.
Yeah, like you mentioned, you didn't have the best of games. I wasn't able to watch the England-Ukraine game. I caught the last 10 minutes, but I believe he was subbed off after 60 minutes, and he was quite criticized on Twitter. Um, I do agree with you. I think he does need a bit of a run of games to build that form and momentum, and also more game time as well. I don't think he featured against Everton. He didn't feature against was it Dortmund, I think, or Tottenham. One of those games, he had that
Yeah,
start against Leicester, which was quite promising. But other than that, we haven't really seen much of him this season since his cameo against Liverpool at Anfield at the end of January. So yeah, I do think he needs a bit of game time, a run of games in the first team to really build that form and confidence. And I think that those 60 minutes against England probably summed up, how he's feeling right now about his game time. And that being said, I thought it was a solid England performance defensively. Chilwell, left back, did a decent job there. So from that side, it was positive.
Another sort of defensive issue came up over the week as well, with Reece James pulling out of the squad for England with a minor hamstring or minor thigh injury, which has been what it's been reported as. But it seems like it's an ongoing thing with Reece James, and I remember sort of saying this a couple of episodes ago, that it feels like Reece James will never get back to that level of also consistency without going, a period of games without picking up some sort of injury or some sort of niggle or something. But also, it does seem like he's one of these players that is just going to have to constantly be wrapped in cotton wool. But it is a bit of a concern, obviously, going into a big period now for us in terms of Chelsea in the season. But to see Reece James pull out of the squad more, I think, for precautionary reasons, but it does seem to be a reoccurring thing now with Reece James, that he's constantly either injured or there's a reason why he can't feature in a game. Do you reckon that's a concern for us more so now as a club rather than country?
Yeah, it is a bit of a concern. He seems to be getting an injury every month or every 2 months, and a player of his age and his quality, we need him. We need him fit to almost play every single game. You compare him to a player like Thiago Silva, who's almost twice his age, and Thiago Silva, he rarely gets injured. I know he's injured at the moment, got that injury against Tottenham, but that wasn't like muscle cramp or anything. It was Harry Kane who fell really awkwardly on his knee or his leg. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it seems like he's that type of player. I don't know if it's because his calves are so big and he struggles to kind of maintain them, but I think we really do need to wrap him up in cotton wool, and that's why when we talk about the Villa game on Saturday, I feel like I might potentially rest him for that game and keep him fresh for the game against Liverpool on Tuesday.
It's a bit of a concern, and I know we spoke about sort of the amount of muscle that he does carry as well, that could play a massive part. But I do worry, and maybe when we eventually get Malagusto fit again, and obviously he's back, he can play for us next season as well. Maybe that will give us a bit more reassurance going into those games, that we can rest Reece James and have someone who can naturally play in that position, play there as well. So, but it is a concern for me. It's one of those things that I'm starting to think now. You know, the season before he got that mad injury, um, is that the best we're going to see for Reece James? He's at that real kind of critical part of his career for me. Very, still young, but I just think he's still picking up a lot of injuries, small or big, doesn't matter to me. He plays in a role that you can't really afford to have that many injuries, because of the nature of the role that he plays in terms of the right wing back or the right back position. But I agree with you, and we'll get onto that later, that he's going to be crucial, I think, for Tuesday's game, more so than against Villa at the weekend. But another player that I want to talk about, Marcus Bettinelli, who has signed another contract. He's here now until 2016. I'll say that again because that's completely wrong. 2026 is until he's here till he's not here till 2016. What's your thoughts on that? Because we've spoke about Slanina on here, I think only 2 episodes ago, and there's obviously talk about one of or either Kepa or Mendy potentially going in the summer. Do you think that's a good bit of business from Chelsea, just to maybe keep a player that we know is aware that he's not going to be first choice and he's happy to be deputy for the two keepers ahead of him?
I think it's quite sensible business. It's always hard to find a goalkeeper that's happy to be third choice and probably knows that they'll probably never kick a ball or catch a ball on the pitch throughout the season. I think Bettinelli's last time he started, it was in that game against Chesterfield in the FA Cup in January 2022, which was quite a comfortable win against a non-league team. So yeah, I think it's quite sensible, and I think as well it shows that potentially one of Kepa or Mendy will move on in the summer, and I think it's more likely to be the latter at this stage. Um, I don't know in terms of quality how good he is now, but I think he's that player that seems very settled in London. I think having signed him from Fulham, he would have been
Yeah.
I think around kind of the Cobham area. I think that's where the Fulham Motspur Park, I think it's called, is nearby as well, in Morden and that kind of area. So I think he would have been settled with his family around Surrey, and I think he seems to have a really good relationship with the English boys, the likes of Gallagher, Reece James. I think you might have seen Reece James put a little post up when he signed a new contract, like glad that coffee club's been extended or something like that. So it's always good to have those faces around the dressing room that can kind of be there for the emotional support and building those relationships and those bonds. So all for it. It does seem like a bit of a long contract, to be fair, to be giving to a third choice goalkeeper. But especially at his age, I think he's in his early 30s now. Maybe tend to give him maybe a 1 year or 2 year max. But yeah, good bit of business, and hopefully, if he is still a decent keeper, we might see him in a pre-season or should get or one of the cup games early next season.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a bit of a surprise for me because I do think from watching Slanina, he's been really good, as I said, for the development squad. And Bettinelli's a keeper. I think he's aware of his position. He knows what he's there to do. He knows that he's potentially not the first choice goalkeeper at Chelsea at the moment, anyway. And I still think, regardless of who we keep or if we retain both Kepa and Mendy, I do think we do need other options in that department. I think if Bettinelli isn't for first choice and Slanina potentially will go on loan next season, we do need someone to come in. So I think as a cover for whoever comes in, or what the circumstances are at the end of or the start of next season, whatever that is in terms of goalkeepers, I think this is a really good choice. I think it's good to have a goalkeeper that's aware of the fact that he's not number one and he's willing to sort of do the Scott Carson at what he does at Man City, for instance. He's willing to sit there and take a wage and be called upon if he's needed. And I think you need someone like that in your squad who's able to do that. Doesn't really make a fuss that he's not, first choice. He doesn't want to be first choice at the moment. And like you said, he's got a good relationship with some of the, the Chelsea boys already at the moment in terms of the coffee club as well. So I think it's a good sign. I think we're always going to see the lengthy contracts now that Bowley and the board are willing to give to players. And I think that's something we're going to just see going forward. Potentially there's some sort of clause in there. We don't know, but I think it's a good appointment. It's a good addition to have in the squad as well. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But yeah, I think I'm trying to think how many games has he featured in. I was trying to think
Yeah,
where this
just
at this morning.
just
I think
just the Chesterfield one. I think he played in a preseason one against Club America last summer.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, I think ideal situation for next year would be Bettinelli first choice, Slanina out on loan maybe to a championship team, uh, Kepa first choice, Mendy. I hate to say it, but sell Mendy and bring in another keeper as a second choice who can challenge Kepa for that first choice spot.
Would you keep Kepa as your first choice then? You'd
That's the
keep him
thing. Yeah,
based on.
I get a second keeper who could potentially overtake Kepa and be our number one.
I think, yeah, I agree. I do agree. I think we need. I suppose I'd flip it around slightly and say we need someone. We need a goalkeeper for Kepa to challenge that
Mm.
goalkeeper, if that makes sense. So I think we need someone who's slightly better than better than Mendy, slightly better than Kepa, but then Kepa to either up his game or be resigned to the fact that he will be spending a lot of the season on the bench. So I suppose it doesn't really make a difference which way that is. But I think you're right. I think interesting for Salinino, because I would have expected there would have been some assurances when he signed for the club that potentially he would be involved at some point with the senior squad, whether that's this season, next season, season after that. So we'll be interested now. What does that mean for him
Yeah, I think give
as
him the
well?
Courtois kind of process. Maybe send him out on loan to another team, more than a couple of
Yep.
seasons, and then hopefully when he's ready, bring him back and give him a season as the second choice alongside a more experienced goalkeeper like Courtois got with Petr Cech, and then hopefully Slanina give it 3 or 4 seasons and he'll be our number one. But from what I've seen so far, it's been really really promising.
Yeah, I agree. More outs to talk about, more outgoings. First, Staffen, because Anthony Barry seems to be first on the list of people to be poached from Chelsea, heading in the direction of Bayern Munich to meet back up with Thomas Tuchel, who they clearly had a really good relationship when they were both at Chelsea, or when Thomas Tuchel was at Chelsea. We haven't really spoke about Thomas Tuchel, and probably because I've tried to avoid it as such. We've sort of talked about it on WhatsApp, but really good appointment for Bayern Munich. I think we've both said that potentially now means that we might see a Napoli Bayern Munich final. I think we're going to see a bit more of this poaching from Thomas Tuchel. He knows what he had good at Chelsea. He knows who he needs from Chelsea to be able to do a good job at Bayern Munich. Do you see the Anthony Barry appointment, if it happens, a good one for both clubs, or do you just see it as a Bayern Munich addition and we kind of lose out
I think,
to some
yeah, I
aspects?
think it's the latter. I think it's more of a bigger boost for Bayern Munich, and we're missing out. I was reading up on Anthony Barry before we started recording, and he's very highly rated at Chelsea. He joined Lampard's coaching team in summer 2020.
Yeah.
I think previously he'd worked for
Is it from Wigan?
I think he was from Wigan, yeah, and previously he was
Yeah.
part of the Portuguese and Irish national teams. I think he was on the coaching teams there.
He's still there now.
He's
He's
still
still
there,
at
there,
Portugal
yeah.
now as a yeah,
And I
yeah,
think he works alongside Ricardo Cavalier, doesn't he? So yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, very highly rated, and I think Chelsea are doing all they can to keep him. In fact, and they haven't really agreed on a compensation with Bayern Munich. And I'm reading until we agree a compensation, should Barry force the move and want to rejoin Tuchel with Bayern Munich. Until then, apparently he's not being allowed back at Cobham.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really spell good. I feel like it's almost going to end in him forcing the move away, or him undoubtedly traveling to Germany and joining up with Tuchel. But yeah, I'm kind of liking that we're not letting him go easily, because he, like I said, he is very valuable to us. He's very rated. I'm sure Lampard, Tuchel, Potter, all the managers that have worked alongside him rate him. But yeah, apparently we've already drafted a short list of coaches that can replace him. I haven't really read up on that list yet, but hopefully it's someone that can fill in his boots.
Yeah, I mean, it will be. I think it'll be a massive loss. I think he's, like you said, he's highly rated in and amongst the team, in and amongst the coaching staff as well. I did read a piece that he's very much responsible, has been responsible for set pieces at some point, and I do think. I mean, that's one thing. Even if you look at, are we scoring enough or are we conceding? I do think it could be a breath of fresh air for us. And I love Anthony Barry. I think he's a really good coach. He's obviously been successful under numerous managers of recent times under Chelsea. But I do think it's just now time to bring in someone new as well. So I think that's where my question was going, in terms of, yes, we're losing someone with really good experience and quality, but it's just now the time for us to move in a different direction and potentially bring someone in. And like, you have not read that short list of replacements, but I do think this could be the time to do that. I would say ultimately, I think he does go to Bayern Munich. I think the fact that he's not a Cobham, the fact that there's a compensation package being discussed even at that stage, tells you that he's going to go. But I mean, no one's irreplaceable. I think we can replace him. And like I said, if he has been responsible for set pieces, we haven't scored that many, and we've let in a lot of. I mean, I'm having flashbacks to James Ward-Prowse already. So we haven't been good on corners and free kicks in terms of actually getting the ball past the first post, the first man, and letting a lot of goals from corners and free kicks. So it's just now time to turn the page, start a new page.
It's a good way to see it. I'd have to agree, actually. I mean, I'm not agreeing, but I'm kind of enjoying the every cloud has a silver lining type of way
Yeah.
of looking at it.
It's not Friday yet, but I've got some Friday wisdom for everyone. We're recording this on a Thursday, so it does feel like a bit of a Friday. But another player, Mason Mount, who has been heavily tipped, and I've sort of tried to avoid it, especially during the international break. Try to avoid the noise around Mason Mount and the fact that he's changed his agent now. He's got a new agent, and a lot of things seem to be surfacing around the fact he will be facilitating a move in the summer. I don't think we've spoke, or if we did, it might have been a while ago. But what's your thoughts on Mason Mount and the whole saga of, will he sign a new contract? Won't he? Does he go to Liverpool? And now obviously Bayern Munich have now come in to that conversation as well. What's your thoughts on everything surrounding Mason Mount at the moment?
I think if he doesn't sign that contract before the summer, he'll be gone. He'll be gone, because we
Yeah.
know what Bowley said, that he wants players with 1 year left in their contract either to sign the deal or to be sold. And there's no kind of letting them run down their contracts like we saw with Christensen and Rudiger last summer and risk losing them on the free. I think if we do sell Mason Mount, you're looking at easily between 60 and 100 million, I reckon. Especially if we're selling him.
Even in the last year of his deal.
Even I would say, even if you're selling him to a United or a Liverpool, I think you're looking at that, because they're direct rivals. I know that the new club that's entered the kind of rumours or talks is Tuchel's Bayern Munich now. Tuchel obviously a big admirer of Mason Mount. I'd hate to see him leave, if I'm honest. I think he's a Cobham Academy boy, back-to-back player of the season for us. And I still think there's a player in there. You look at Rashford, how poor he was a couple of seasons ago, and how he just rediscovered his form this year. I think the same thing will happen to Mason Mount. I think he's just had a bit of a poor form, like Hazard did, even in 2015, 2016. And then he had that competition at the Euros, and all of a sudden he was our best player under Antonio Conte the following year. So I think we should keep him. I think we should give him a big contract, sign him to a new deal, and hope that he performs. And I do think, like I said, there's a player in there. I know we're going to speak about it in a moment, where we do have to sell a lot of players in the summer to meet kind of financial fair play, and we're operating on a bit of a loss at the moment. But I think Mason Mount shouldn't be on that list of players that leaves in the summer. I mentioned Tuchel wanting to poach some of our players. Mount, I think I also read that he's a big admirer of Kovacic as well, who's been one of our better players. And actually, in the international break, he scored twice for Croatia against Turkey, and had a brilliant game against on international duty. We spoke about goalkeepers, but I think also I read that Tuchel might look at Edouard Mendy as well as an option. I think Neuer's now a bit out of favour. I think he's not really liked, having gone skiing over Christmas and injured himself. Sommer, brilliant goalkeeper, but is he good enough to be their first choice long term? I don't know, but I think Tuchel might look at Mendy as an option. And like I say, if these players were to leave Chelsea, I'd much rather them go to Bayern Munich than, Kovacic to City, Mount to Liverpool, because then we'd be strengthening rivals, and that's what we've kind of been doing recently with some of our players. You look at Mata going to United, you look at Jorginho and Petr Cech going to Arsenal. I think we need to stop doing that, because you look at the clubs that sell us players from from Premier League teams. There's not many. There really isn't many. So I think we should stop selling our kind of good, but they still remain good players, and I think we should stop selling them to direct rivals. But back to Mason Mount, it's frustrating. But like I said, if he doesn't sign that deal before maybe June, I think we should look to sell him. And I think as well, as something I read, that we have to sell a certain amount of players before June, even, or agree to sell them before June to meet that kind of financial fair play deadline, perhaps.
It's difficult, because part of me sympathizes with Mason Mount a lot. He does not want an 8-year, 7-year deal that takes him up to when he's about 30 years of age, or just beyond 30, I think. So he doesn't want this, 8-year, 7-year deal that, other players have happily signed and whatever. I don't even think it comes down to money or wages. I think the wage structure obviously would equate to how many years as well. So I don't think the money's the issue. I think the length of the contract that Mason Mount's been offered is a big thing for him, which is, is his own right. I think now that Bayern Munich have Thomas Tuchel, and I think back to how Thomas Tuchel got some of the best, out of Mason Mount as well. I would not be surprised if he ends up there. I always think he would end up in another English club. I don't see him really going abroad, but I think with Thomas Tuchel there, he has that pull. Thomas Tuchel has that pull to potentially have someone who he's worked with before to come to the club and, put the arm around the shoulder. Look, they're not treating you the best at Chelsea. Come to Germany, things will be fine. That sort of mentality. I think it will work for him. I think it's probably the best thing he could do, if I'm honest. And I agree with you. I think there's still a really good player in Mason Mount, which is what I've said all along. Even when I've criticised him, I think there's a player, but when he's not playing bad, we have to call that out. But I think in terms of Mason Mount, take him out of the limelight altogether, which is what Graham Potter's done, but take him away from the English football. I think that would work for him. I think he'd do really well in the Bundesliga. I really do. Under Thomas Tuchel as well. They've got some really good players that he would bounce off as well and work really well with. My only other sort of scenario that could end up with this is the fact that he doesn't actually sign a deal, and he does run down his contract, and then he moves somewhere else. And you tend to find players do that now. So because they want the sort of additional add-on fees, or the agent gets more fees as well. So that could be, I think back to Aaron Ramsey, I think when he went to Juventus, I think as well, and he ended up, getting a massive chunk of money that potentially would have gone to the club, but he ended up receiving it himself, and obviously his agent got paid a lot more for that. So there is that option that he does just decide not to renew. Would a club allow that? Possibly not. But then, the valuation, like you said, you're talking 100 mil. Is a club really going to want to come in and pay 100 million for someone who they can potentially get for free next year and give him the money? So it's hard. It's difficult. And I did read that there's the talks have stalled the talks are going to be recommencing in the summer. And as you've just said, end of the season and June, you're talking a couple of weeks, a matter of weeks to try and get something, inked on paper. So there's a lot to do in that short space of time. Do I want him to stay? Yes, but I really don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I think you spoke about it a bit on one of the recordings you did on YouTube over the international break, but I think Joao Felix, that's a key decider as well. We have to remember
Yeah.
he's on loan, similar position to Mount. I think we spend the big money on him. Can we afford to sign Mount on a new contract? Can we afford to have two players in a similar position, fight for a spot in the first team next season? I don't know. And I think if you base it on form and you base it on who the fans want to kind of maybe see next season, I think currently right now is Joao Felix. So it's quite another tricky one. And I do think that kind of Felix loan in January unsettled Mount, if I'm honest as well.
Right.
I think Nkuku as well. That's a player coming in the summer. He can play as a bit of a 10 or a centre forward. Another player that might unsettle Mount. So I can kind of understand Mount's frustration, but like you, I'd much rather him stay. But we're talking about a matter of weeks to get that contract sorted now, and it's looking more and more unlikely.
Yeah, I think the fact he's changed his agent as well is a massive indicator to me that he's more likely to go than stay. But I'm not in these conversations. I'm not a fly in the wall, unfortunately. But we spoke a lot about players leaving and sort of the FFP. And I know there was an article that came out. I think I read it on the Athletic to say that the club have announced that during Roman Abramovich's sanctions. So this is going back to the last sort of previous financial year. A loss of 121.3 million, a loss of revenue was recorded and reported, which I think is astronomical, really, for 21-22 financial year. A lot of that is down to a lot of factors. COVID played a massive part. You think back to then as well. You think back to the fact we couldn't sell tickets. We weren't able to sell merch. I think the shop was closed for how long? How long was the mega store closed for? The club shop was closed, and programs couldn't be sold as well. So there was a lot of things that you have to factor in. But that is still a massive lot of money. And obviously now you're talking about FFP as well. That's a lot of money to lose. What's your thoughts on losing or recording a reported loss of 121.3 million?
I think, like you said, it's completely due to the sanctions. You look at we secured European football. We played Champions League last season. We would have played in numerous competitions. I'm talking Super Cup, Club World Cup for TV rights. But yeah, I think it's the sanctions. Like you said, we couldn't sell match day tickets. We couldn't sell merch. The megastore wasn't open, I think, between March and until I think Bowley finalised the takeover. No match day programs. I mean, this is a lot of revenue we're talking about on match days, and I think probably about 15 to 20 games, I'd say, were affected by those sanctions, where only season ticket holders could go who'd already paid their ticket, start of the season. So yeah, COVID sanctions. I think that's what kind of caused it, but it's a lot of money, like you said, a lot of money. And if this kind of affects us going forward this summer with the players that we might have to get rid of, or players we might not be able to sign, or areas of the squad we can't strengthen in, then it's going to be a huge blow for us. And we know who's to blame for that one, but I'm not going to say his name.
Yeah, and it's difficult because I think, I was reading the other day, and I don't know if it's been resolved now, but the funds, the proceeds of the sale are still held up in a almost like a frozen account somewhere that the government are still responsible for. And I think this won't make any difference to the loss that we're talking about, but just in terms of how suddenly it was needed to get rid of Roman Abramovich and the sale of the club, and it was all to feed the proceeds back to Ukraine. That hasn't happened, and we're talking almost a year on now. So what was the urgency to have those sanctions in place in the first place? It doesn't really add up to me, because if there was an urgency and it was to help the proceeds of to help the Ukraine, it hasn't happened. So what was the urgency to put those sanctions in place? What was the ultimate benefit of doing that? I don't see one.
No, there's a lot of questions that have to be asked about that period end of last season. A lot of it didn't make sense. I'm not
Being
really.
very,
Yeah,
very diplomatic there for you. I can see you trying to.
Yeah, I mean,
but no, you're right. You are right. To be fair,
I'll call him. Let's say the former Prime Minister of the UK is to blame, and the English government. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions that go beyond football as well. I
Yeah,
think it doesn't just stop at the football, but I think in terms of the loss, it obviously has a massive implication on FFP. We've just spoke about Mason Mount, and there's a lot of other players I think that will need to be, and we've already said would need to be sold anyway. I think this isn't news. This isn't something that's just come out of the blue that we need to now sell players. I think there's a lot of players at the club who just need new challenges. Need new lease of life in a different club or to find their actual level of football. You spoke about a couple already. I think you said about Mendy potentially being interested with a move to Bayern Munich or vice versa. We've spoke about Mason Mount, but is there any other players that you would see? Obviously, Aspilicueta for me is a big one, but is there any other players that you would see on a list, a fire sale? Let's call it a fire sale of players that potentially will go in the summer to try and balance out the books.
I think the names you mentioned. I think the top two after that, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, spotted in the Camp Nou dressing room. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
after the Clasico game, he clearly his head's not with Chelsea anymore. I can understand his frustration as well. Not in the Champions League squad, hasn't played a minute of football. I think since that cameo against Tottenham, and since he was subbed on and subbed off, I think against was it City or Fulham, start of the season. Um, so I think it's just for both parties. I think it's best that he leaves in the summer. I know we only signed him for 10 million, but I think his wages are quite hefty. So a move back to Barcelona or maybe the Turkish league or wherever he wants to go. I think that would be more sensible. Hakim Ziyech, another one. We know his move fell through fax machine related or David De Gea esque again a couple of seasons ago. I think the email just didn't get sent in time. But yeah, I
yeah.
think like I always talk about, the guy's so active when he plays for Morocco on his Instagram, but when he plays for Chelsea, silence. Like, come on, play. He clearly, I feel like he doesn't really play for the club anymore. He doesn't really feel any passion or emotion for the club. And he hasn't been getting game time as well, so that's the part that's quite surprising. So yeah, I think he needs to go as well in the summer. I think if PSG want to reactivate their interest in him, it's more than welcome. Um, Obviously, there's those players that you're still unsure. You're very unsure about. The likes of Conor Gallagher, who nearly left for Everton in January. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, whose name's always being mentioned every transfer window. A lot of players out on loan. I think that now kind of in that deadwood category. You're looking at
Yeah.
Baba Rahman, who's still, I think, on loan at Reading.
No, he's not. Is he?
I think he
Did we
is.
not sell him?
No, I think he's still part of the books.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Malang Sarr as well. I was surprised he featured last season, but yeah, a player that's not really ready yet. He's on loan at Monaco, and I don't think he's played much this season. I hate to say it, but Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
a player
yeah.
who had so much promise and potential, had that big move lined up for him to go to Bayern Munich, turned it down, signed a new contract. It just hasn't really worked out for him. He's played under numerous managers now. He got, I think, injured against Luton, I think, in the FA Cup. Hasn't played a single minute of football for Chelsea since. Went out on loan at to Bayer Leverkusen, and I don't think his numbers are that good at Bayer
He's
Leverkusen.
not had a good season
He
at
hasn't.
all.
He's played under two managers there, I think, currently Xabi Alonso, and I don't think he's really featured amongst both of them. So that's a big decision we have to make with him in the summer. And I'm even given his performances, how much money would we get for him? Other players, yeah, Aspilicueta, I think, is one. Just it's best for both parties now, maybe to let him go and kind of leave as the hero and legend he is. I'm going to ask you: is there any other names you'd include on that list?
Well, the reason I brought this whole topic up was because I was on Twitter,
Mm.
and good people at Reactionary Blues, who I think follow me and I follow them on my personal account, they pulled up a list of players that they would potentially sell, and a lot of them you've ticked off. But I'm just going to go through the list and see
Yeah.
if you agree, because there's some that I think will raise your eyebrows a little bit. So, and not because I don't agree with it, which is obviously their opinion, but they've gone for obviously Edouard Mendy, Aspilicueta's on that list, Trevor Chalobah,
Mm.
Koulibaly.
Mm.
There's a couple of raised eyebrows already. I'm not even halfway down the list. Mark Cucurella, Mateo Kovacic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Conor Gallagher, Mason Mount, Hakim Ziyech, Christian Pulisic, Kai Havertz, Armando Broja, Romelu Lukaku, and Aubameyang as well.
Should we
So
just sell the whole squad while we're at it as well?
yeah, well, this is why I wanted your take on it, because I didn't agree with the list. I'll be honest, I didn't agree with Trevor being sold. I think Koulibaly, yes, you can say that he's had it's been up and down this season, but I do think when he plays, and it's not a case of just selling the squad. I mean, we can't do that. We have to be, these things have to be phased, and you can't just get rid of all these players to then bring in players and expect all those new players and the players we brought in already this season to just gel next season. It's not going to work. So I agree with the list that you had. I think that the list that you had there, everyone on that list, I'd love to add Lukaku
Yeah,
onto that list.
actually, as soon as you mentioned the list, I was like, Lukaku, he should be
Yeah.
first on that list.
I was waiting for you to bring him
Yeah,
up. I was waiting, but my worry with Lukaku is I think it's whether Todd Bowley wants to take that risk of not recouping the funds that were paid to bring him into the club. You're talking, what's he worth now? 40 million, 50 million, 30 million. It's whether he wants to take that hit or if he wants to give him a second shot or third chance at the club. So that's a massive question. But I think at this point, I agree with you. If they are deadwood, and I don't want to put Lukaku in that bracket, but I think he's one of those that very much like Aubameyang. If we have someone who's quite toxic or quite disruptive around the squad and we're trying to build something,
yeah.
taking 10 steps back.
I wouldn't class Lukaku as deadwood, but I class him as dead to the fans. That's what I say.
That's going to be the soundbite. I think I agree with you. I think, but then it does leave the question. Obviously, I think Broja will need a loan. I mean, he's coming back from a massive injury. I don't think you can expect him to play much senior football at Chelsea next season. But I think there's a lot of players on that list. Conor Gallagher, I think, would potentially get a move, Crystal Palace or Newcastle. I spoke recently about Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Has he hit the ceiling at Chelsea? I think he has, in terms of, yes, when he plays, he plays well, but he's not you're not someone that I think of to start every single game for Chelsea at the moment. I don't understand Mark Cucurella being on that list. I don't think he's going anywhere because he's, Graham Potter's prodigy. He loves him, and he's only recently come to the club. Same with Koulibaly and Trevor Chalobah. That doesn't really make sense. That doesn't make any sense to me because I think I'd rather see him go out on a loan if anything, and that's at a push. But I do think he's going to be given a much more better role next season. Gravadiol is another one we've been linked with, and I think we should just stick with Trevor Chalobah. Levo Colwell's got to come back into this squad at some point as well, and I think he's got another big part to play. But it'll be interesting because I think there's got to be a lot of sales before we even think about bringing anyone else in. But it's scary times because you've got to hope that clubs want these players. What if no one wants the players? What do we do then?
Who's going to pay Lukaku's wages next season? That's what worries me. I feel like you almost going to have to get on our knees and pray that Inter take him for another season on loan and then see what happens the next summer. But yeah, a lot of questions to be asked this summer regarding our transfer business and also departures that go out on loan and players that come back, maybe that are on loans. I mean, I know we've got Zachariah, who I don't think will stay now. Datro Fofana, who I don't really understand why he didn't go out on loan in January, but I think Galatasaray were interested. Another player as well that needs a season out on loan to develop his football and gain some confidence. Like you mentioned, Amanda Broja got badly injured before Christmas. A player that maybe needs to go out on loan next season again to rebuild his fitness and his form. But yeah, it's going to be a very busy summer. I've got a feeling about that. And Malo Gusto coming back as well. Another player that we'll have in our squad next season. But like Potter's mentioned numerous times, it's a big squad to work with. So that's just a first indication that's going to be trimmed down start of the summer.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I agree with you 100%. And just to round up, I'm sure I read something, and don't quote me on this, but I read that if we miss out on the European places, we won't be implicated by UEFA's FFP ruling as well. So I think in a way it would be good to miss out on European spots because then it doesn't mean that we don't have to then comply with UEFA, I think, or something. So it could be a blessing in disguise if we finish 10th. Someone said that this is Bowley's plan to keep us 10th and Potter's plan to keep us 10th to make sure we don't have to comply with the sort of rulings within UEFA. So credit to the hierarchy for that one.
I'll say it again: every cloud has a silver lining.
Yeah, listen, this is the motto we're going with for this episode. But let's talk about some good stuff as well. Came out this morning. I think that Petr Cech, Ashley Cole, and John Terry have all been nominated to be inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Premier League, which is something that well deserved for all three of them. What's your initial thoughts when that news was announced this morning about the three of them being nominated?
Yeah, really well deserved. We're talking about, for me, best centre back in the Premier League, best goalkeeper without a doubt, and arguably the best left back that's ever played in the Premier League. So they're all really well deserved to be there. I think if one of the three should be on inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame first, it needs to be Petr Cech, in my opinion. And I say that because we're talking about the goalkeeper of the most clean sheets in the history of the league. I think it's 202 out of 400 and something games, and he's got the best clean sheet percentage per games he's played. So I think, it's got to be Petr Cech, but I think there's some other really good names on that list. I think even Jermaine
I've
Defoe.
just pulled it
Yeah,
up.
Jermaine Defoe, that's a really underrated player for me. You've got Vidic, you've got Ferdinand, you've got Les Ferdinand. So all those
Robbie
players,
Fowler.
Robbie Fowler, Michael Owen, Gary Neville, I think from the top of my head,
Yep.
all the players there deserve to be in that Hall of Fame, in my opinion. I don't really know what's the criteria is. I think it's the fans who vote, and they only allowed 3 votes. I'm sure the Chelsea fans will be voting for those 3 Chelsea players. But yeah, if at least 2 of the 3 can get into that Hall of Fame, I think it'll be a proud moment for a lot of Chelsea fans.
Yep. I'd agree. I agree with you as well that Petr Cech, is one that should be out of that, group of nominees. I think he's the one that stands out for me that should be. And all of these players that are on here now, go through this list and I'll put it on the screen when we do the edit. But all of the players will get into this Hall of Fame. I mean, there's no questions about that. They're all within their rights, quality players, and should all deservedly go into it. But I think Petr Cech, when you think about just the level of clean sheets, the games that he played, and he was the, should have been the man of the match in those games as well. And to come back from that injury as well. I mean, I know people don't like to bring that up and use that as an excuse, but to come back from that injury that he picked up, I feel like, was it against Reading? Was it against Reading?
Yeah.
Reading? It was Stephen Hunt, I think, wasn't it? I still remember that clear as day. To come back from that injury, to still put in really good performances like that, could change any player's perspective of the game, and to still continue to do that at that top level for me, as much as he went to Arsenal at the end, which kind of ruined his legacy a little bit, but one of the best goalkeepers for me. But I agree with you as well. Jermaine Defoe, Les Ferdinand, Michael Owen, Vidic, Yaya Touré's in that list as well. So he's amongst some of the best Premier League players of all time.
Yeah, but I think the other 2 Chelsea players that are in the Hall of Fame already are Frank Lampard and Didier Drogba. And I think if we talk next 3 Chelsea players that deserve to be on that list, it's Ashley Cole, Petr Cech, and John Terry. So like you said, I think it's only a matter of time before those 3 get into the Hall of Fame.
Just so we're on the same page, and I know you're going to say yes, but Ashley Cole has to be the best left back of all time.
100%.
Time. Before Roberto Carlos, any other.
Yeah, I was going to say Roberto Carlos. No,
not for me. Not for me. And not to discredit Roberto Carlos at all, but overall, Ashley Cole, and this is not me being biased, because I disliked Ashley Cole so much when he played for Arsenal. And the day that Gallas moved to Arsenal and Ashley Cole came to Chelsea, I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. And to be fair, Arsenal got the shittier end of the stick because Gallas didn't actually perform for them that well.
And he wore the number 10 shirt for them as well, which still doesn't make sense.
Who does that as a defender? Like, you don't do that. But over time, Ashley Cole won me over, and he is arguably the best left back I've ever watched play football.
Yeah, I mean, that goal line clearance against Napoli, people don't talk about it enough. I think that arguably probably won us the Champions League, because had Napoli scored an extra goal, you don't know what would have happened in that second leg. But yeah, fantastic footballer. I think we're going to have to do an episode, just pick footballers and talk about memories with them. But yeah, definitely. For me, best left back ever.
And just quickly as well, John Terry. I think it resurfaced this week that I think might have been the anniversary of the whole final where he ended up swallowing his tongue, and I mean, that's what John Terry was all about, putting his life, everything on the line just to make sure the ball didn't hit the back of the net. But which we're going to save this for another day, because this is an hour's worth of conversation. But John Terry is up there, if not the best centre back I think I've ever watched in the Premier League.
Yeah, I know that United fans will say Vidic. Arsenal fans will
So
say Tony
Liverpool,
Adams.
Liverpool fans will say Van Dijk, and I
Yeah,
never get
Van
that.
Dijk
But
or Carragher. But for me, it's just John Terry. You look at even that season, I think when he was 30, 34 or 35 and played every single game in 2015 under Jose Mourinho that won us the Premier League. He's just a fantastic footballer and leader. And I know a lot of rival fans don't like him as a person, but every Chelsea fan that's met him will say how nice he is. He interacts with the fans so much on social media, and just a warrior. And you could also argue that maybe we haven't really replaced him. I know we've got Thiago Silva now, but we've seen Thiago Silva at 38, 39. But imagine a prime Thiago Silva alongside John Terry. Would have been such a
no one's
spectacle to
getting through.
watch. No one's getting past it, even getting into the penalty box. Yeah,
Chance, not a chance. And to be honest with John Terry, just again the goals. I mean, we
yeah,
forget how many goals he scored. He wasn't just defensively, but offset pieces and just being in the box at the right time as well. He chipped in.
yeah. Does he still have the record goal defender of the most goals? I think
I
that
believe so.
record still stands. I don't know if maybe
I believe
Trent
so.
has overtaken him or something like that, but
He's not a defender, is he? You can't class Trent as a defender.
but
But
yeah,
yeah,
John Terry, all round what a player, fantastic leader and fantastic captain, leader, legend.
yeah. Long let it continue as well. Let's focus on Saturday, 5:30. Massive game. I'm sick of saying that. Must win game. I'm sick of saying that. But these are the facts. These are must win massive games for us. Every game's massive, depending on how we want our season to go. But Aston Villa, who've hit a bit of good form.
Yeah,
I mean, I've watched them previously before the international break, and Unai Emery's got them playing some really good football. But going into this game, obviously there's going to be injuries, fatigue, and international breaks can cause a lot of mayhem for clubs. But what's your thoughts going into this game on Saturday against Villa?
tricky game. Like you said, they've picked up some form with Unai Emery. Unbeaten in March. I think they beat Bournemouth, they beat Everton, beat West Ham, I think, or drew West Ham, and I think they beat another team. And I think they're unbeaten since they lost to Arsenal 4-2, I think, mid-February time. So Unai Emery's definitely turned their season around. I think it was it still Dean Smith before Unai
Yeah,
Emery?
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it was the right move to do. And you look at the pedigree of Unai Emery. I know he divided opinions of Arsenal fans, but I think 3 Europa Leagues in a row, Sevilla, Europa League with Villarreal.
Yep.
He knows how to win games, and he's a good manager. And I think it's going to be a really tricky game tomorrow. I think, like we mentioned at the start of the pod, we've got Liverpool on Tuesday, which is a huge game for us. And I think there's going to be some rotation in the team. There's going to be some players that played a lot of international football as well. You're talking Enzo, who's got traveling back from Argentina. Pulisic, I think, played against El Salvador and Granada. I think he's in the semi-finals of the Nations League equivalent.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going to have some long journeys to travel back from. There's going to be some rotation, I think, and the game's at 5:30, like you mentioned as well. So not a lot of time to recover between then and Tuesday. You're talking maybe 48 hours max. Yeah, I'm expecting a tough game. I think this was really kind of a challenge now for Graham Potter. It's that kind of squeaky bum time part of the season where every game is almost a must win. There's no time to think, okay, we lost this game, but as no more than a few games. I think it's probably not even 10 more games left in the season. I think maybe less even. And tricky games we've still got left. You look after Villa, we've got Liverpool at home, we've got Arsenal and United away, I think at some point in April or May. We've got those back-to-back Champions League games against Madrid in April with Brighton at home squeezed in between. We can't afford to drop points in a game like this, but I don't know. What are you feeling for Saturday 5:30?
I mean, it's always going into these games, and I've said it on here before. I don't go in with the expectation. It doesn't ruin my weekends anymore because I think I've just resigned to the fact that wherever we play like is what we're going to play like, and this season has been written off for me. But I expect us. I mean, we've got a relatively good record against Villa. At home at Stamford Bridge. So I expect us to really, and if we're being honest, based on the game against Everton that we should have won, the way that we played against Leicester at the King Power, I'm expecting us to still continue that form, regardless of international break or not. I think we should be able to go into that game with the momentum of still picking up points, still getting the 3 points as well. It is going to be tricky because obviously, like you said, we've got that short turnaround from Saturday to the Tuesday game at 8 o'clock on the Tuesday against Liverpool. But again, that's at home. That's at Stamford Bridge as well. So, less travel time, less, disruption to people's routines, to the players' routines as well. So, yeah, I mean, I expect us to do really well against Villa. They are, I mean, they're just below us and we're level on points with them. So this is a game where I hate to say it, guys, but we could end up in the bottom half of the table if we lose, which I've been sort of flirting with for the last couple of weeks. I've been saying it. So, we do need to seriously win this game, more so for just, you don't want to be finishing the season in the bottom half. You don't want to be finishing in the conference league position, but you don't want to be in the bottom half of the table. And I always say the 40-point mark is the mark for securing yourself, Premiership survival for another season. And we have to hit that 40-point mark. So for me, really, this is just a point of, solidifying, the fact that we don't want to be going down. We want to be trying to push up into the table as much as we can. It'll be interesting how Potter lines up, and it'll be interesting to see what he comes out with his press conference tomorrow, whether Reece James, is out for the Liverpool game. I mean, that's another thing. Does he still have recovery time that creeps into next week as well? So that'd be a big thing as well. N'Golo Kante, I'd love to see him back in that team now. He's obviously, we didn't mention this, but he played a behind closed game during the international break, which I think he posted about early this week on our social accounts.
Sterling back in training as well now.
Sterling's back in training, so I'm expecting some of these players to at least get minutes. I'm not saying Kante should start the game, or I'm not saying Sterling should start the game, but at least give them some minutes now. Kante's got through, a good period of a behind the doors closed game. So he should be able to play something against, if not Liverpool, against not Aston Villa, at least against Liverpool. But yeah, we should be able to beat Villa. I mean, yes, they picked up some good form, but on paper, the team. Both teams have sort of been in and out of form, infrequent. I think we should be able to beat them. I really do.
Are we doing
it'd
predictions?
Be interesting though.
Might as well, I feel.
Yeah, you've made me go first, which I hate doing. I'm gonna go 1-0 Chelsea. I think we'll keep a clean sheet. Again, defensively, how does he set up? If it's a back three with the wing backs, then I think we'll be okay. But Thiago Silva, how long is he out for? Is he? We haven't really had much of an update. Badia Shil,
Fofana,
Wesley Fofana.
Yeah, Fofana's a big one as well because he had to pull out the French national team, and it was the first time he was called up. So I think it'll be his press conference tomorrow. Potter's press conference will be quite interesting to see who's fit, who's got a chance of making the squad. But I'm not as optimistic as you. I think, like I spoke about Villa's form, and a player that particularly stands out, Ollie Watkins. I think he'll nick a goal. He's been good this season. So, and you look at that Everton game, all those chances we had, we just couldn't kill the game off, and then we let Everton back into the game. So I think it will be a 1-1 draw.
Optimistic. I'm optimistic. I'm going to stick. I mean, they've got a good squad. You look at Jacob Rabsey. You look at Leon Bailey, Buendia, Douglas Luiz, John McGinn. They're back. I mean, even Tyrone Mings has been putting in really good performances for them. When he's been playing. Martinez is having the life of his time as well in goal. So they have got a really good squad. But on paper, I think we should just nick this game. We should be able to do it 1-0.
Yeah, man of the match Enzo performance. That's it.
Hoping so. I mean, he scored a goal for Argentina as well. Slightly higher up the pitch is what I've been crying out for Enzo Fernandez to be playing slightly higher up, and he looked like he was doing that from what I got to see for Argentina, like a 20-second clip. But he's got to be more central, more advanced in our team for me. But N'Golo Kante coming back in might allow him to do that. So Potter's got a massive dilemma on his hands this weekend.
Be a good game. I'm going 5:30 tomorrow. I still don't know where I'm sat because I've got a couple of tickets. And
I wish it was Friday today, Theo.
It feels like a Friday now. It feels
you got
like
my hopes up.
Still one more day to go at the office, but yeah, Saturday 5:30 kickoff, 2 days to go. Looking forward to it. It'll be good to be back at Stamford Bridge. Let's hope.
Did you say you don't know where you're sitting as well?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for a mate to tell me if he's got season tickets. But I think
Okay.
it might be West Lower or Shed Upper, which I like.
Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be good. And you secured your Real Madrid.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it. Going to Madrid away on 12th of April. First time in Madrid, first time at the Bernabeu. I think
I have to
you're
swim to get there by what you were saying.
yeah, flights are expensive. We're having to fly to
Camp out.
Valencia and then take a train from Valencia to Madrid, and on the way back, it's train back to Valencia, Dusseldorf, London.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a trek, a bit of a journey, but it's all part of
That's
the
not
away
bad.
experiences. Yeah,
Yeah, that's not bad. That means you get to see more while you're away. So I think it's all good, to be fair, isn't it? I think it's good. Um, so yeah, you should enjoy that one as well. But yeah, predictions are in. We'll obviously listen into Graham Potter's 1:30. Hopefully it's 1:30 tomorrow. His press conference, team news should be out then, injury news as well. So um, yeah, let's hope one of us is right, I think.
let's hope
So
it's
what
you.
did you say? 1-1.
Let's
You
hope.
said 1-1,
Yeah,
didn't
let's
you?
hope you're right, not me.
I'll take 1-1. I'll take 1-1 based off an international break because, again, I have flashbacks to that West Brom game, and I'm sure that was
Yeah,
after the
it was
international break
this
as well.
time. This time 2 or 3 years ago,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah. So I'll take a 1-1 against Villa. But Theo, as always, thank you very much for the conversation. It's always good, and hopefully we get 3 points. We need it. We don't want to be in the bottom end of the table or bottom half of the table come Sunday, going into that crucial game against Liverpool as well, which we'll talk about, I think, over the next couple of days or so. But thank you very much for joining in the discussion. Enjoy the game as well.
Cheers.
I'm sure you will, as always. This has been episode 87. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you like, share, put your comments in the comments description section as well. Make sure you hit that Linktree link in the description. That takes to all our social accounts and previous podcast episodes as well. This has been episode 87 from the Shed End. Thank you very much for watching.